Let's feature Naganadel-GX in Checkmate. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sable Eyes. I'm Mitch and today we're going to be taking a look at Cinccino in its flagship deck Checkmate. We're going to be reducing our prizes down to 3 and then winning the game next turn, putting ourselves in a position where our opponent can't win, but we definitely can. That's what the deck is all about, and we're going to be using Cinccino to try and get there. Let's check out the list and see how it works. So obviously we are basing our list around this Naganadel-GX with Stinger. We need to make sure that we are setting up some knockouts. We're going to use Stinger-GX to shuffle all of our prizes into our deck as well as our opponents, and then replace them with 3 fresh cards. That means we can afford to give up 5 prizes before we have to Stinger, and by then we should be able to set ourselves up in a position where we can win the game the next turn. It is worth noting that we are playing 2 copies of this Naganadel and 1 copy of Turning Point Naganadel in this list, so it's like a 2-1-2 line of Naganadel, and that is because we're going to use this one to Stinger. We need to have that one, absolutely, and then this one we could use to do something like knock out I don't know, maybe a Dedenne or something if we've already set up an extra knockout elsewhere. Maybe we could use it to knock out a Mewtwo or something like that. We can use this as a little bit of an extra attacker down the line. So it's important to remember that we have it. It's probably not going to be that useful unless we're in specific matchups, but it is there. Most of the time, the way we're going to try and set up our knockouts is through a 1-1 line of Dewgong with Dual Blizzard, so placing 60 damage on 2 Pokemon, right? So 2 of your opponent's Pokemon get 60 damage. Hopefully we can set up some damage counters on extra Pokemon so that we can make that Dual Blizzard happen. Or we're going to be taking a straight knockout with something like Persian-GX with Vengeance, which can do up to 190. Now this is really, really good to be able to get ourselves into a position to win the game, but it's also going to be a good place to be if we do Stinger and our opponent knocks out our Naganadel-GX. We can use Catwalk to try and find 2 cards to help us win the game next turn. We probably won't use Slashback, obviously we want to use Stinger-GX. But Persian is also good to try and set those numbers up. 190 is a really, really good number to be putting on tag team Pokemon like ADP, Mewtwo, and Pikarom. We also have a 4-4 line of Cinccino with Make Do as a little bit of consistency. Energy Assist can also be a way to win a game as well. 40 damage is nothing to sneeze at. You can definitely get 3 prizes with that if you've set the numbers up correctly. We also have 4 Jirachi so that we can put those in the active and Stellar Wish. The rest of the Pokemon line are really some tech slots. Ditto we have an extra one of so that we can potentially get an extra stage 1 into play. Things like Dewgong, Meowth, Persian, Cinccino, our Naganadel-GX with Stinger need to evolve from something, and Ditto is obviously a good option to do that. We have 1 resource management Oranguru, just in case we're playing against something like Mill. We need to be able to put stuff back into our deck, try and win the game at some point another way, but we need to make sure that we can recur those resources. Then we have 1 copy of Mew as well to stop our opponent from sniping the bench. Decks like Pikarom know that when they are about to win the game, we're going to have to Stinger GX. If they save their GX attack, then they could potentially win the game unless Mew is in play. So we need to make sure that that is in place. Our other Pokemon here, we actually have 2 Koffing with Blow Away Bomb and 1 Weezing, which also has Blow Away Bomb. The reason we run those is because we have 4 copies of Roxie that we're going to use to draw cards, and not only that, but with our Blow Away Bomb, Koffing and Weezing, we can put damage counters on our opponent's Pokemon whilst we draw cards as well. So that is a really, really good option. Now you might ask, well, why are we actually playing the Koffings? Like, why would we not just play 3 Weezing? Excellent question. We also run 4 copies of Professor Elm's Lecture. We can use that to grab pretty much every one of our basic Pokemon. We can grab Meowth, Ditto, Cinccino, and we can also grab Koffing with 60 HP. So, in a pinch, we can use Professor Elm 1 turn, pick up a couple of Koffing, and then guarantee that we're going to be able to get those Koffings discarded with a Roxie on our next turn. So it is an important piece of the puzzle, and those extra damage counters that we'll be placing will be important to try and set up our win condition, which is obviously to provide that checkmate after we have used Stinger. We also have 2 copies of Tate Liza. This is in order to do a couple of things. We can shuffle draw 5. Obviously, it was a reasonably good consistency card to try and find some extra pieces, but we can also use it to retreat, and you'll notice that there isn't actually another retreat card in this list, so we're going to need to use that to get our opponent, get our Pokemon out of the active if our opponent doesn't knock us out. We also have 2 copies of Island Challenge Amulet in this list. Obviously, we don't want to be losing multiple prizes on some of our GX Pokemon. If we can afford to, we can chuck one onto a Naganadel GX that we've just put in the active to use Stinger, maybe even to a Persian on the bench. And that just means that our opponent, when they take the knockout, are only going to be taking 1 prizes instead of 2. And that's actually really good, because if our opponent does knock out Naganadel GX with that Island Challenge Amulet on it, then Persian still actually triggers Catwalk, because the Pokemon's still a Pokemon GX, it just only gives up 1 prize. So not only are you going to give up 1 prize less, but you're going to be able to find 2 cards out of your deck as well. We also play 1 copy of Chaotic Swell. Not super worried about our opponent's stadiums in this particular deck, but if we do put down Chaotic Swell, it can lock out decks like Pikarom. If they only play that Thunder Mountain, it can be reasonably good. It's also just a little bit annoying for some decks to be able to not be able to put down their particular stadium. So Chaotic Swell is reasonably good. We have 2 copies of Reset Stamp. We can Stinger, and then if they do knock us out, we can Stinger them, Reset Stamp them down to 1 and try and stall them out of the game if we can't get the knockout. Reset Stamp's obviously very good for other reasons as well, even if they go down to 4 prizes. Maybe they go down to 1 prize, we Reset Stamp them and then Stinger them so they have 3 prizes left. That would be even more frustrating. So we're going to try and do that as well. We've got 3 copies of Pokemon Communication. We've got a lot of Pokemon. We've got 29 Pokemon in our deck, so these 3 Pokemon Communication cards are pretty much always live. We can use them to grab whatever we need. Ordinary Rod obviously puts Pokemon back in the deck so we can get things like our Koffings back. That way we don't need to worry about them getting discarded with Roxie. We can potentially get 2 more back, and that will be great news for us. We also have 2 copies of Great Catcher. We need to be able to gust specific targets, especially since we need to make sure we're taking those last 3 prizes. So gusting out our target is going to be a good idea. We have 4 copies of Great Ball as well. It's obviously a relatively good Pokemon search option when you have almost 50% of your deck as Pokemon. Great Ball is going to be able to find those Pokemon without any problem, and it's effectively free. We're in a position where we don't realistically care about which Pokemon we get, as long as we get one, and most of the time, to be fair, it is going to be one of these Cinccino pieces, which we're more than happy to get. And finally, we have 1 copy of Porter. This can just be really annoying for our opponent. We can move a special energy from one of our opponent's Pokemon to another. It means we can move a special energy off of an attacker onto something that might not necessarily need it. Especially if you've played down an Aurora energy or something like that to be able to use, I don't know, one of Mewtwo's attacks. Maybe you're trying to avoid that Naganadel GX snipe, or even just something like Ultimate Mewtwo having a whole bunch of energy in play. Maybe you just move one of them off of that Pokemon onto something else, and it might potentially stop them from being able to do what they want to do. So Porter, a relatively good card here as well. That's all for the items and trainers. Finally, we have 5 energy cards. We have 1 copy of Recycle Energy. This is good. It allows us to firstly use our Oranguru with Resource Management, which is obviously a good deal, but it also means we can use Energy Assist as well. We won't be able to attach any of those energy, but we will be able to do the damage with it, so you never know, we might be able to get 40 damage done that way. Mew with Psi Power is also another way that we can use that Recycle Energy. And finally, we have 4 copies of Triple Acceleration Energy. We need to make sure that we use one of them on our Naganadel GX to use Stinger, and then we're going to try and use the other either on Persian-GX or on something like Dewgong in order to try and get those last 3 prizes to win the game. So there is definitely a lot of good things that this deck can do. Things like Jirachi are going to be in big trouble, especially from that Dewgong. If the Roxie starts doing some damage, we're going to be able to potentially take a big knockout on a tag team if we've got a turn with Persian where we can just attack. There's lots of things that we can do, and we're going to be able to draw a lot of cards whilst doing it because we've got that Cinccino and Jirachi engine. It's pretty much the most consistent thing that you could possibly have in this game. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll take this one out onto the ladder and we'll see if we can show off exactly how Checkmate works. So it comes down to it here. This is not necessarily a deck that I would normally be playing. I'm not one for stally, control-y type matchups, but you never know. It might work out for us. We've actually got a really good hand here. We've got a Jirachi, a Minccino, and a Poipole to start us off. That's pretty much all we could realistically ask for. We're going second, which means that we're going to have a little bit of a difficulty getting our Pokemon evolved quickly. But we are playing against ADP, so this matchup could be really interesting. We want to make sure that we get a lot of damage onto that ADP quickly, so that we can try and get our 3 prizes on that. We are in a bit of trouble though. They're going to attach here. Next turn they'll probably get their GX attack off, and from there we have 2 turns until we get our Stinger GX off. So realistically that means we're on a clock of about 3 turns here to try and get what we want to do done. So it's a bit of an awkward one. We'll see how we go. They've chucked down a Chaotic Swell here. They've got the energy on the ADP, and I think they're going to Dene. They've got that in hand. So we'll see those cards discarded, and obviously still a Stellar Wish to work with as well. Ditto coming down too, so this potentially could be a different version of ADP than we're used to seeing. Obviously, with tournaments around the world being cancelled, there is a lot of experimentation happening on the ladder at the moment. We can see when the last like 20 of our videos have been very experimental. So yeah, lots of people taking it a little bit less seriously. They've flipped heads here. That's the end of their turn. We're just going to chuck all of these cards down. We might consider using Tate Liza. Obviously, Enterporter not a useful card for us here. I think Tate Liza is fine. What we'll do is we'll use it to shuffle our hand into our deck and draw 5 new cards. Hopefully we can get ourselves something interesting. 2 Great Balls here is really good. It means we can potentially find ourselves a couple of extra Pokemon. We might Stellar Wish first, and Professor Elm is actually a really decent card here too. It means next turn we'll be able to get a ton of those Pokemon out. I reckon we just rip at least one of these Great Balls here. We'll probably grab the Meowth. That seems like a good option. We've got Pokemon Communication in hand as well. We don't necessarily need to play this second Great Ball, but I reckon it's probably not a bad idea. We could grab this Cinccino. I think that's probably pretty safe. We want it to be a little bit riskier. We could have potentially gone for the Minccino, but we do have the Elm in hand, and we're not super worried about the way that our turns are going to go for a little bit. Our opponent obviously GXs this turn, then they've got 2 knockouts, so we're going to be able to get some stuff going here. We just need to make sure that we're drawing cards. So what we'll do next turn, we'll probably Elm and then play the Cinccino and draw some cards from there. Unless, of course, we get something better off of our Jirachi or our top deck. So, on the other side of the field, we've got, hey, a special energy going down onto that ADP. That means that Enterporter in our deck is actually going to be live here, and it might be able to buy us another turn. I was talking about how it's probably only 3 turns away from having to actually take some action here. Maybe we could steal an extra one, especially if they don't play Energy Switch. They've just switched into the ADP and they've used Quick Ball to get rid of the Shrine, so they're definitely going to be able to GX this turn. They're probably going to grab themselves, oh, a Koffing. So that's going to be a, what's it called, a Copperaja. Alright, Copperaja deck in seeing some action here, and the Berserker. And wow, there's a lot of different things happening here. Cynthia coming out, so it looks like instead of Zacian, we're looking to power up Copperaja, which is quite an impressive strategy. But yeah, like I was saying, we're going to be able to potentially use Enterporter if we find it to move that energy, which could maybe buy us a turn. You can see the Copperaja coming out here with the Pokemon Communication. Berserker's going to be increasing the damage of that Copperaja to try and take some knockouts. And there is the Altered Creation. Okay, so now we're in a interesting situation to say the very least. We need to try and find ourselves that Enterporter this turn if we can. If we find it, we'll actually be in a really, really strong spot. If we don't, that might be a little bit more awkward. What we'll do is we'll make do. I'm going to get rid of this Poipole. We don't realistically need it. We've got another Jirachi here and a Great Catcher. What we could do is we could Stellar Wish and hope to find Roxie. That's probably the best thing to do. We actually get it here, which is really, really strong. Otherwise, we could have just Elmed and played it a little bit safer. And now we can actually get rid of this Jirachi with Pokemon Communication and try and find one of these Koffing, right? Instead of any other attacking Pokemon, we can use Roxie, put 2 damage counters on everything on our opponent's side of the field, and then draw 6 cards. So this is probably the best possible outcome. And we actually found the Enterporter here, which is amazing. What we're going to be able to do is going to play the Ditto down. That means we're going to have a couple of Cinccino next turn. We've got the Naganadel-GX as well, so when we need to, we're going to be able to Stinger. And I think the key is the Enterporter will move that energy off of our opponent's active Pokemon, and it will force them effectively to be an extra turn behind, which I really, really like. So we'll play that Enterporter. We're going to move the Aurora energy off. We'll put it on the Berserker. I think it's probably the least important card that our opponent has. It's the least likely to do any damage to us. And I think now we're probably in a fine position just to pass. Means that our opponent realistically isn't going to be able to power up their attackers this turn unless they get a crazy hand with like a ton of different attachment options they need to attach on, like triple saucer. So that would be very impressive, or double saucer, my apologies. But yeah, I think we're in a pretty strong spot now. That Pokemon catcher is going to be pretty frustrating. They'll bring up the Poipole here. We've got a Ditto, so it's not the end of the world, but I'd prefer to use that for a Cinccino. Best case scenario here, our opponent just attaches to the active and passes. We might be forced to kind of go into our Naganadel-GX a little bit earlier than we want to here. We need to make sure that we can get at least 90 damage onto this ADP as soon as possible. If we do that, then we'll be able to knock it out with a fully powered Persian. There are 3 Pokemon in the discard right now. We need to have, I think it's 9 Pokemon in the discard to be able to get to 190, because it's 10 plus 20 for every Pokemon that you have in the discard. Now, our opponent plays down a Zacian here. They haven't attached an energy yet, so it's a good chance actually that they might have missed. If we see an Intrepid Sword here, not only have we bought another turn, we've actually bought 2 turns with this Enterporter, because without an attachment, our opponent is still 2 turns away from getting a decent attack off. So we've got that little bit of extra time, and here's the Intrepid Sword, so it looks like we're actually going to be in a pretty strong spot here. No attachment means that, yeah, 2 turns is going to be the amount of time it takes for them to get going. We've got the double Cinccino. I think it's probably correct to do our make do first, just in case something better comes up. I mean, I'm not gonna say no to 2 Cinccinos here, and now it's probably time to put it down. But you know, we just double check just to make sure that that is the right decision. We're gonna make do the Jirachi away. We don't realistically need that too much. We find a Dewgong here. What we really need is we need to find that Seel as well. We'll go with a Great Ball and see what we can get. We've got an Oranguru and a Jirachi. Both of these Pokemon are perfectly acceptable. I don't know if either of them are super useful right now. We'll probably grab the Jirachi. We could potentially Pokemon Communication to try and find that Seel now, but I'm kind of in a spot here where I think we don't realistically need to worry about it. We could put it down, we could play this Naganadel-GX. There are lots of things that are happening here that we could do, but one of the key things for stall decks is that sometimes you just don't need to do anything. Like this Naganadel-GX, that could just be a really risky play. It looks like we're actually, I'm thinking about Stingering, which is pretty impressive. This game was played live on Twitch at twitch.tv/thesableeyes, so if you're interested in seeing us record some of these videos, then you might like to check it out. I think what we're going to do here is we're going to Stinger GX and then presume that our opponent is going to miss the knockout since they've got absolutely nothing in hand. They had no energy, they didn't attach any energy with the Zacian. I think this is a calculated risk here. We're going to Stinger GX and try and get ourselves into a position where we can take our knockout. Now, like I said, in hindsight, maybe this is not the best idea because we could potentially just get knocked out and lose this game, but we're going to take a risk and try the Stinger play early, especially since we have all the cards that we need, and then we'll try and get our knockouts from there. A bit of a gamble, but based on the way that our opponents have been drawing, it seems like it might be possible for it to pay off. Our opponent doesn't have any energy in hand by the looks of it, otherwise they probably would have attached one somewhere. And that's a real positive for us. It means that we're in a pretty good spot. There's a Cynthia, so no energy at all. They'll be hoping to find some off of these 6 cards. And we'll see what they can do with it. They've got a Quick Ball, but they've got no space on the bench. They actually discard a Metal Energy here. So maybe they've got more than 1 energy in hand. Perhaps a Metal Saucer coming into play pretty soon. So that could be pretty good. They're going to grab a Koffing here. and then you presume that we'd see an energy attachment. They're actually going on to the Kopparaja, which is pretty interesting. And then there was Zacian again. They'll draw a few cards, and there's no any energy attachments there. So again, I feel like we've got an extra turn. Maybe this risky Stinger play will pay off. We've got the Seel as well. We're realistically looking for Tate Liza here to try and get us out of the active. We've got a reset stamp here that could be worth playing. I think that's probably the thing to do, although the question is, do we just go for a Seel or a Minccino here? I think we want to get those extra cards in place. We've got the Cinccino in hand, so we can manage that. Then we'll play Professor Elm. We'll just grab this Meowth. We don't realistically need anything out of the deck at the moment. We've got a ton of Pokemon here. Just looking for a Roxie, really. That's pretty much the key for us. And the key for our opponent is finding energy, and they haven't got any, so we're in a pretty decent spot. Again, that risky Stinger might pay off here with that reset stamp. We'll see how we go. Although I must say that in general, you probably want to make sure that you are attaching to that you are getting the damage on before you Stinger GX. So this is kind of an abnormal game, I guess. We've got ourselves 3 Cinccinos in play now. We've got a ton of draw options. We've got the Persian-GX. There's the Tate Liza, so we're going to be able to get into this Persian if we can find an energy, which would be great. But we also realistically want to find a copy of that Island Challenge Amulet as well. We can chuck that on there. I feel like we're going to be in a pretty solid spot to win this game. So Cinccino, we probably go for the Cinccino here and draw another couple of cards. I think what we might do is we might just get rid of this Jirachi here. We'll draw a couple of extra cards, see what we get. We get the amulet and we get the triple accelerated energy. I think I might have accidentally misclicked there. I might have just accidentally put it on the Naganadel instead of the Persian. That's okay. That's alright. Our opponent's got nothing that they're working with, so we should be fine. We could use the Tate Liza to get into the Persian here, or at this point we could just reset stamp our opponent and just sit back and hope for the best. When playing this game, I obviously thought things were going a lot better than they were, because I'm seeing in hindsight a lot of terrible misplays that could just lose us the game. What we're going to do is we're going to use our fishing rod. We're going to grab back the Weezing and the Koffing, put them back into the deck, and then I think we'll just Roxie. We'll use to get rid of the Koffing and the Seel. Draw 6 cards, put 10 damage counters onto everything that our opponent has in play, and there actually is another challenge amulet, so it's not the end of the world. We managed to find another one, so we can attach that to the Persian, and now next turn we have the ability to do a fair chunk of damage to this ADP. We've got Great Catcher and the triple accelerated energy, so that seems pretty good. The question is, are we going to be able to get that knockout before our opponent does anything? And at the moment, their energy attachments onto that Kopparaja have kind of cost them a little bit here. If they had have attached to the ADP, they might have potentially been able to attack, although to be fair, they have just been using the metal energy. So it's not the end of the world. I think at the moment we're probably looking at a pass here from us. There's not much more that we could realistically do. Although I must say we are getting quite a little bit, we're getting a little bit lucky here that everything is going the way that we want it to. If our opponent takes a knockout here, they're going to take 2 prizes because of their GX attack going off. So I think the best thing to do is probably just a pass. Although we could do, no, it's probably best to pass. It's probably best to pass. Just pass. Just pass. We've made enough mistakes already. Let's just stop our opponent from capitalizing on them, shall we? Here comes a Metal Saucer. So this is a frightening prospect. The Kopparaja is in play now, and we could potentially see, oh, just an Intrepid Sword. So we're going to have an opportunity here. We can Tate Liza into the Persian. We're going to do 190 to this Arceus Dialga-Palkia. I think that's pretty good for us. I think if we just Tate Liza here, we switch into the Persian, we have enough Pokemon in the discard that we're going to be able to get a decent knockout, a decent hit here. There's a ton of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's plenty of them, or at least 9. We can Vengeance for the full 190 here. So that's a pretty good effort. That'll put our opponent on 220, which means they've got 6 energy 6 damage to go, and that means with Roxie and double what do you call it? The triple accelerated energy. I got there in the end. So Roxie, triple accelerated energy, and the Koffing and Weezing in hand, we are almost guaranteed to win this game from here. It's unbelievable that we've managed to work so hard to do it, but we've finally got there. Our opponent couldn't quite get out of the active, lacking the switches to do that. And it looks like, yeah, there's just the concession. So, hey, we got away with one there. So it took us a little bit, but we did eventually manage to get into a position where we could win the game. It's really unfortunate, though, that we made so many misplays, because I think we could have probably won that game a little bit quicker if we hadn't been so reckless. That Stinger-GX just didn't need to happen at that time, but that's okay. We're all learning, and, you know, we're not playing as much Pokemon as we ought to be, because there's no tournaments on, which is really disappointing, but hey, that's okay. We're very, very close now to getting onto our Rebel Clash Training Center, so it's that stage that the people that are currently watching, the end of the video, the people who really care about the channel, maybe you could put in the comments the decks that you'd like to see in our training center for Rebel Clash. What kind of decks are you excited for the next format? If you have stuck around to the end and you aren't subscribed, then consider doing that. There's a button that's just here that you can click to subscribe if you'd like. There are a couple of videos over here that YouTube thinks you'll like, as well as a playlist of more Sword and Shield content. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at the Sableyes_YT. I almost stuffed that up. And that will be all. We'll see you next time for more from the Sableyes. Bye.